I'm Honeyshuckleex.
I'm Zackwad Barbecue.
And I'm Giggleklutz. And today, we're talking about The Witness. You should see Honeyshuckle's face. I know you can't. I'm just going to tease you with that.
We've just started and I'm done.
Oh, stop. Once we're done, you don't have to do it anymore.
I've already made a joke in like an episode in this season where I already end the episode at the very beginning, so I can't make that joke again. So
Too late.
Oh, damn it, you're right.
Yeah, but that one, it made more sense. Kind of. This one is a different flavor. That was speedrunning. So, yeah, speedrunning the episode. Yay, it's already done. No, we're talking about the 2016 puzzle game, The Witness, done by Thekla Inc. as the developer and the publisher. And it's available on Steam. Oh, I can't see the price because I own it. Anyway, for money, I'm going to spoil the review right now. Whew. We recommend it for a select audience, but it's absolutely not for everybody. And it kind of wasn't for us. I ended up obsessed anyway. That might have been COVID fever getting in the way because of what have you. But how would you describe the genre of this game?
Alright, so you know how, like, walking simulators do that stuff where it's fun to explore? The Witness wants to not do that and have lots of mazes. You're going through a maze, you are solving mazes. That is the genre I'm thinking of. Walking simulator, maze in a maze.
Yeah, maybe a couple more layers there also, while claiming to be an open world.
It's not quite an open world. Like,
oh, no. It's beautiful. We'll get into aesthetics in just a minute. There's some things I want to, well, anyway, warning, there are things we liked. There's a lot of things we didn't like. This is going to be a very spoiler-filled episode. If you had any interest in playing The Witness, yeah, be warned. We're going to talk about whatever we want to talk about and not honor your feelings about spoilers in this, so enter at your own risk.
Enter at your own risk. Spoilers and attitude.
Oh, yeah. Spoilers and attitude. Yes. For this one, it's absolutely spoilers and attitude. I don't mind spoiling The Witness for you because, honestly, going into this game spoiled but knowing what you're in for might actually give you a better experience than taking it on surface level, because I really believe that this game sets you up for a bad time. I really do think so. And with that on point, this is the description they have on Steam. You wake up alone on a strange island full of puzzles that will challenge and surprise you. You don't remember who you are, and you don't remember how you got here. But there's one thing you can do. Explore the island in hope of discovering clues, regaining your memory, and somehow finding your way home. The Witness is a single-player game in an open world with dozens of locations to explore and over 500 puzzles. This game respects you as an intelligent player, and it treats your time as precious. She can't even listen to me say this. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to say it again, but I want you to be quiet. But understand, this is how she feels having played just a small portion of this game. Okay? The Witness is a single-player game in an open world with dozens of locations to explore and over 500 puzzles. This game respects you as an intelligent player and treats your time as precious. There is no filler. Each of those puzzles brings its own new idea to the mix. So this is a game full of ideas. Okay, go ahead and get it all out. Get it all out.
This is a game full of ideas. That one I can agree with.
Each puzzle brings something to the table. That's a good one.
Sorry, kid. Nobody understood that.
Each puzzle brings something to the table. That's a good one.
Well, especially since some of the puzzles are like basically light switches. I'm like,
yeah,
they count in the puzzle count for the one of the 2 achievements. So
like, oh, you want to flip a switch to call a boat? Good job solving the puzzle.
Yeah.
It's like, if I can rewind back a bit, just like it talks about you waking up on an island without your memories. The game's not really about that.
No, it's
not.
not.
You don't regain your memories at all.
There might be something that represents that, but it's kind of, it's not the main focus of the game, and it's entirely serving another purpose. It's not so much to just be a narrative.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, seriously, maybe if you thought you would hate The Witness, you might actually like it better after listening to us. Because I'm not going to tell you there's nothing in there worth doing. I'm just saying it doesn't seem to understand itself at all, from what I can tell. And I know that's an interesting criticism to have of a game, but here's what I wrote about it. Because I've been contemplating art as video games since I played this game, which sent me down the rabbit hole that took us to those Moriarty lectures that we talked about in that other episode. All of this started because I played this game, and as I'm wandering around the environment of the game, I know there's something more here. I'm not positive even now, that was in 2022 that I played the game. Now in 2024, I'm still not certain that it knows what it wants to be. But what I said was, The Witness is art. Just because I think it's trying to be. Anything that is intentionally art is art. Just boom. Whether or not it's elevated, as we stated in our other episodes, is up to the beholder, but it is art. It is absolutely using a medium to communicate. But it's also a confusing mess that seems to want to touch on everything and focus on nothing. That's my take on the broad picture of The Witness. Alright, now that we've gone through the Steam page, and if you want a good time, especially if you have your own personal experience with The Witness, if you want to have a good time, go read reviews, because whether you love or hate the game, there's fun to be had reading the reviews. A lot of people love it. Most of the reviews are very positive. If I wrote a review for this, it would not be. I can't. I wish there was a meh.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Most people do.
Because it's like, oh gosh, if I recommend this, I don't recommend it for fun. That's number one. I don't recommend it for fun. So, aesthetics and the main experience of playing this game. What's it like, guys? You walk out the entrance, and you're in a castle or...
Yeah, small garden. Castle garden. Overgrown. I'm having a hard time, describing, the aesthetics of the game. Because it's not quite realistic.
Yeah, the colors are super saturated. It's more colorful in real life. Beautiful. Absolutely aesthetic.
But this game makes me think of, what stylization brings to a table.
Oh, yeah.
Because, it's trying to not be realistic, but have realism at the same time. I know to some people that's not going to mean, the same thing. Rather, that is going to mean the same thing. And I'm saying them, they're two different things, because to me it is. There you can have, a lot of details and, things that bring, a realistic quality, but not be, fooling you into thinking it's real. And it's in a weird... in between.
It's found a liminal space between those.
Yeah, which leaves it very hard for me to describe.
It's definitely designed with a visual focus. Everything is supposed to look specifically a certain way. You know that the look of everything is very carefully crafted, very carefully designed. And, there's nothing extra anywhere. Almost. The buildings don't have furniture in them. Except when they do. Anyway, that's that's just the thing, is it makes these rules and then breaks the rules constantly, but there's no narrative, there's no characters. There's just you walking around this environment, the island, and there are buildings on the island, and there's a glass factory on the island, and a temple on the island, but there's no other evidence that people were ever there. It, is representing places humans have been, but it doesn't actually feel like places that humans have ever been.
Which is wild, because, when we talk about this, you always bring up about how they hired architects to make sure all the buildings could be real, could be possible.
But that's to make sure that you feel like you could be in that space. If a balcony exists... you might be able to find the bolts on the other side of the wall that are holding the balcony in place. It's like you were talking about earlier today when we were getting ready to do the episode. It's not constructed like the things are real. Well, not like the representations. It's a glass factory, but what if it's a museum-type representation of a glass factory in a theme park-type environment? All the structures you're touching exist, but they don't exist like they would if you actually needed to make glass. That's what I'm saying. You know, like the balconies exist, and like the lumberyard is there, but there's no way that would function like a real lumberyard. There's lots of things missing. And why is there a lumberyard and a glass factory on this island? What purposes do those things serve? I'm not exactly sure. I know that there's videos contemplating these kinds of things. I'll get into more of that when we talk about themes. But yeah, like the locations are interesting choices for locations, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, like having, you know, for example, like a lumberyard, glass factory, 2 castles,
a weird mountain fortress.
Yeah, some sort of, I don't know, water treatment facility? I don't know what that weird area I got stuck on.
You mean under the temple?
No, that's... It had, like, these underwater capsules that you had to move back and forth to actually get to different areas on, like, these grates above waterways. I don't know what that is. I'm calling it water treatment. I don't know.
I think it was technically just supposed to be a swamp.
I love swamps. This doesn't feel like a swamp.
Yeah, so it feels like the game couldn't choose human-type environments or natural-type environments. Tried to do this interesting mix of both. Neither actually would make sense for people living on this island. There's a town. None of this has any people in it. None of it looks like any people ever lived there. It really feels like the shells of buildings you'd find in a playground or a theme park.
Which can be cool, but for me it doesn't resonate.
It made you feel lonely from what you said.
Yeah.
There's almost nothing lonelier than a theme park with no people in it, I'm going to say. But the puzzles themselves that you're exposed to are basically these line puzzles where you have to make a line on a specific pattern via rules that you're not actually given. You have to figure them out. And there's an in-game... If you find the right group of puzzles in the right order, which doesn't sound open-worldy at all to me, then it will teach you how to play. If you can find your tutorial puzzles for the area that you're going into before you end up in the area, and often it is gate-kept, so you can't get into the area until after you find your tutorial puzzles. It'll teach you how to solve these kind of puzzles and then let you into the area where they are. Usually, but not always. None of these rules stick all the time. Not anywhere, ever.
Ugh.
And each section has its own puzzle type. They all could be given to you on a piece of paper. They all exist completely two-dimensionally.
Except for the ones that include sound.
Oh, yeah. Except for this. Well, no. Not necessarily the thing you need to solve the puzzle is two-dimensional. But the puzzle itself, what you have to interact with, the tablet itself is all two-dimensional. Because, yeah, there are lots of puzzles that pull from the environment. The tree puzzles... Audience, you don't need to care. But there are puzzles that expect you to manipulate the tablet and create a path based on what you hear or what you see in the environment, not just what's on the tablet itself. And different areas pull into those things without warning, and sometimes not obeying any sort of logic. Or logic that escaped me. So it's, I'm gonna shake my head. It's like, you're too dumb to get it. I don't think I'm going to go there. I don't think I'm going to accept that I just wasn't smart enough. There is a level of gatekeeping happening in a lot of this stuff. Anyway, that's the surface level, is you're wandering around trying to solve puzzles on these tablets on poles, and then when you solve one, it'll power the next one. And then you just follow the power cable around the island. Totally open world, following the cable around the island.
Mm-hmm.
When you solve each area... a machine will pop up out of a yellow box and it'll shoot a laser at the mountain. And once you shoot enough lasers at the mountain, you can open up the mountain and go into the mountain fortress. So, they're kind of a pull to take you places, but you're mostly left to your own devices. And I mean that in a bad way. I don't need my games to be linear. I don't need my games to be narrative. But if it's going to be neither, it needs to be more consistent. Like, I really think this game would have benefited greatly from being linear, at least, where it had a specific path that you went along, and that specific areas where you do this one, then you do that one, and this one teaches you something about what the next one's going to be, where one will set the stage for the next one. And maybe some branching paths, which actually kind of is what it looks like if you just look at the paths. That's kind of what it is, but it needed to be more so. It needed to not try and expose everybody to everything all at once if it's going to drop you in the deep end the way it does consistently.
Yeah, that deep end is exactly what started turning me off from the experience of the game. Because you touched on, like, the tree puzzle earlier, where, like, there's an orchard, you have all the panels in this one are actually the puzzle shaped like a tree, and you have to look at the closest tree to know what path you have to take to get to the end. And just having this, like, the way of teaching you to look around for that kind of stuff is very misleading, because this is the only place where you have the puzzles shaped like a tree. So, like, when you pull from these kind of things in other areas, like, what is the indicator, right? It's not going to be as obvious as this one, so why make this one so obvious and precise,
For that specific purpose, is to teach you to look up off of the tablet at your environment. But, I don't know, it works okay. I actually think that one works better than some of the other things that they tried to do.
Yeah, it just, as a tutorial for it, though, it feels wonky. Like, they could have come up with something else and had, like, this one be, like, its own consistent rule in its little area and not be the example for what it would look like for the rest of the game,
Yeah. I'm having trouble imagining that, and I don't want to think about that too hard right now when we're talking about the Witness itself, because there's a lot more ground to cover. This is just the surface. When I was playing, I was wandering around and honestly getting very frustrated with a lot of the puzzle types. I mean, immediately I figured out that I was not going to enjoy my experience and I needed to take control of my knowledge base, and immediately went to a guide to try and figure out what on earth was going on with the different puzzle types. One, because, I was very sick while I was playing this, and I am recovering from having that be a permanent obstacle in my brain where I'm not allowed to ask for help. I'm not allowed to look at a guide. Like, no. I'm trying desperately to get over that, because the struggle shouldn't be the goal, necessarily. It could be the game's goal. It doesn't have to be my goal for myself. I have struggled enough in my life. I don't need my fun gatekept by struggle in that way. It has to be a struggle that gains me something, and this struggle didn't gain me anything. I did not feel a great sense of accomplishment once I figured out some obscure rule that didn't actually need to be obscure. There could have been a guide in the game itself that at least told you what the different puzzle types were. But, one of the things it was trying to do was have a tutorial that could teach you everything without words. And, well, they exposed me to everything without words. It didn't really succeed in teaching me everything without words. There's logical leaps in all of the tutorial sections where it lost me. And I assume it's because they're pulling from a knowledge base that I don't have. Maybe it's a programming thing. Maybe it's some other kind of technical thing that I am not exposed to. So at some point, all of the tutorials hit a logical leap that didn't make sense to me. But I'm having a feeling that I might have logical leaps I could do in areas where they have no expertise, and I don't feel dumb knowing that I have logic leaps that don't make sense to me.
Yeah, like, one area I was in with, like, you have to, like, include different shapes in the line that you create in this puzzle.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Those ones, like, just, like, halfway through the area, they introduced the concept that, like, if it's at an angle, you can put it in any rotation.
Yeah.
And just dropping it in the middle of a sequence of panels, when you've already adjusted to the first rule of it has to be in the exact orientation it's presented, is infuriating to me.
So, what Honeyshuckle's talking about there is all of these puzzles on the tablets, well, most of them. The trees are one exception. I'm trying to think if they're, and one of them is in hexagons rather than squares. But most of them are on a grid of squares. And you have to make a line that starts in the circle and ends in the rounded end. There'll be a half circle on the other side. So there'll be like a mostly circle that attaches to one part of the grid, and then there'll be a rounded end. And you know that your line has to start in the circle part and end in the rounded end. But it has to have a certain pattern through whatever grid that's there. And you determine that via symbols. Like there's one where there's symbols on the pathways. You have to make sure you cover all the symbols to make the proper path. There's other ones where there's symbols where you have to keep one group separate from the other group. There's ones where you have to have certain numbers in each group. There's ones where you have to make at least one mistake. There's ones where you have to make a certain shape with your line. And like she's saying, it's like, yeah, and then they added the twist later that the orientation matters sometimes, but not always. And because there's no words in the rule telling, they can't tell you nuance of, can you combine the shapes in ways they touch? And the answer is yes, but only sometimes. Like, some combinations of the shapes touching work, and some of them don't. And I never was able to figure out the difference in the logic rule between those two. And maybe there's some programming language thing where that makes sense to them. It didn't make sense to me. As someone who was imagining placing two pieces of cardboard next to each other and trying to imagine how I would draw a single line through a grid to cover that, the perimeter of that, it's like, well, when does the line count on the edge? Does it disappear on the edge in the logical stuff, or does it continue, or, is it part of the shape anymore? I just had to try it and see what worked, and it didn't seem to be consistent to me, which means it either wasn't consistent or it was following a logic that's part of a language that I don't speak. It's obvious in a language I don't understand. And since there's no back and forth, there's no narrative happening, I can't learn that language. It's just sitting there kind of dancing in front of me, and at some point it feels like a mockery. And I think that, I forget what the guy's for, Joseph Anderson, maybe? There's a YouTube video called Witness a Game You Shouldn't Play, a Great Game You Shouldn't Play, where he also reads the description off of Steam and doesn't crack up, but gets really mad about the whole thing. And then the trick with all this is eventually these puzzle types combine. Like, there'll be more than one type of designator symbol on the puzzle panel, and you'll have to figure out how to combine the two logic or three logical rules in order to solve this particular puzzle. And if it didn't make sense to you really in the first place, combining them is not going to make it any easier. And there's no one to ask. You have to go to a guide to look it up. And even then, mostly all you're going to get is solutions, unless you're playing this with other people. And I've said some places, people are like, well, you actually were supposed to write it down on paper. I'm like, okay, that's pretty freaking ridiculous to have a video game have puzzles that you're supposed to buy graph paper or draw your own graph paper and then draw it out time after time after time in order to try and get the solution. I'm like, from a game that tells you in its description when you buy it that it respects your time, either you're being facetious right now and this is some sort of joke, or you're deliberately lying, or you're delusional. Which is it? I'm not sure. And what's so funny is I still think this game has value. I mean, we're complaining about all this stuff because this is what the surface looks like. This is why I can't wholeheartedly recommend the game, is because it drops you into this. You really should have an expectation that you will probably need a guide at some point in the game, because you value your own sanity and you value your own time enough that you will do that for yourself. I'm saying you should.
Yeah, value who you are and what you need in the face of this experience, because it will not do that for you.
No, not at all. And it seems to poo-poo the idea that you might need that. When really, in reality, if you want to live with other people and you want to live in community, you need to recognize that we all need support. And then we're all going to have places where we have knowledge and places where we need knowledge. And vilifying research, vilifying community, and talking to each other, seriously, when you're playing it, it kind of feels like you're cheating by looking at somebody else's answers to go to a guide. But really, no, games shouldn't be like that. That's like, I don't know what it needs to be, but that's not a game anymore. And yeah, I do think this game forgot what fun is. If it ever knew. So, these tablet puzzles are the surface. They're what you're going to experience and probably get frustrated with before you even notice that there's anything else going on. It's a reasonable thing. It's reasonable to feel that way when you're jumping into the Witness, that the tablet puzzles are going to frustrate the crap out of you, and it appears that that's all there is. It's like, this is a beautiful environment that's not being used appropriately, is how it feels to walk around. And then it turns out there's more to it. And usually for most people, this is the big spoiler.
Not all the puzzles are on tablets. They are in the world around you. Tons of circles and lines all around you. Everywhere. In the clouds, in the rivers, in the dirt paths, in the stonework, everywhere there will be some. And, like, it's so cool, right? Like, this is a great way to get you looking around and enjoying the environment, right? Mm-hmm. Right? This is fun. This is so fun to have to look at everything at a very extremely specific angle. So fun. It's not going to correct you at all. If you are 3 pixels off, you're going to have to move. And, good luck moving 3 pixels.
Good. This is not the introduction anybody needs to environmental puzzles. I know you're feeling that way, and yeah.
This is my least favorite part of this game, and I love it and I hate it.
Obviously.
I want to love it more.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
It's just like, yeah, there's the humongous risk that because of how not on your side this game is, how completely dead set on not compromising itself at all for you, it's like you can get to this point where, oh yeah, the environment really means something now. And it's worse.
Yeah, kind of. So, what Honeyshuckle's talking about is, it appears, while you're wandering around and playing, that all the puzzles are on these tablets that are on these posts connected to each other via wires. They have to be powered before they turn on. Ta-da! And then, all of a sudden, you'll probably accidentally click on, say, well, for me, I'll tell you how I did it first. I'd gone through the whole temple and gone to the bottom and done all those reflective puzzles, right? And I noticed that there was something on the other side of the elevator. So I sent the elevator up without me, which then meant that I had to go all the way up the way I came in, because you can't pull the elevator back down.
Oh,
I'm pretty
God.
sure. But maybe you can, maybe not. But anyway, I noticed that there was a weird line on the bottom of the elevator. And it turns out that there was an environmental puzzle on the bottom of the elevator. And I followed the line and like, oh, that's pretty cool. I wonder if there's more of those. And I wandered around and I started to find them. But it wasn't the spot where most people find them.
Like, I think the tutorial for this is at the top of the mountain.
Right, yes.
Because there is a panel that has this weird squiggle on it, and you do it, and it does nothing. But then, if you look, you'll notice that the river below you has that exact shape, and you can click on the river and complete the river.
Right. So, you start noticing that circle and rounded end, creating a path, boom, it'll make this really weird noise while you're tracing the path, and it'll tingle in the environment. Sparkle, I guess, is the word you'd use. But, to let you know that you actually did find one. Not all circles are environmental puzzles. You do get a verification signal that you actually found one. And then, boom, once you have it, it kind of explodes into the air and shoots off in a specific direction. If you follow that, you end up at one of 8 obelisks that actually shows you where they all are and what shape they are.
I thought it was blank until you found them and then they showed up on its surface.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
Or I think you find one and then they all show up.
I don't know. But
that's giving the game a little credit, but...
Which, yeah, I understand there being a hesitation to do so.
To what? To go look?
To giving the game credit for that, since it
yes.
doesn't seem to line up with its attitude.
No, not at all.
Like,
I'm not giving you an inch. That's the witness.
Like, you heard me rant a little bit ago about how, like, these have to be, like, extremely perfect. If you aren't at exactly the angle it wants you to be, it just won't work. Now, I want you to imagine that you have to do this on a moving platform. So you're, like, on a boat, and you have to go around the island to solve some of these. And if you mess up, you have to start all over.
Yeah. Luckily, the boat does stop whenever you want. It's not on a specific cycle, and you can back up. So you can move the boat back and forth until you get it. But some of them take a significant amount of time to do. And I mean, in-game time, it's like good 30 seconds of holding your cursor in exactly the right spots. And if you miss it, you gotta start over.
Yeah, and, like, one of the rules is that, like, the line has to be the same color all the way through. Except when it doesn't!
Yeah. It's very specific, and it's not even consistent in specific areas. Like, one of the puzzles won't work because it's a different shade of yellow in the middle, and other times they don't even care. It's brown in the middle. And it's like, if the rules were consistent, it would be nice, because it doesn't give you an inch. Not an inch. This game does not give a crap about your sensibilities. It doesn't give a crap about
your color vision
or your processing of sound. There are some sound puzzles that are kind of the bane of a lot of people's existence in the jungle section. And I admit, I brute forced them. You know, I got through those before I started completely using a guide, because I'm like, my experience of the game was, okay, there's something here. I don't know what it is. I'm very frustrated. So eventually I just got a walkthrough off of YouTube, and I followed along. I played along. I let the guy on YouTube solve the puzzles for me. I just wanted to see more. I wanted to see the whole island. I wanted to see everything. I wanted to know what I was missing, because I knew there was something here. And when I get stuck, often I'll go into reviews and try and see if other people complain about being stuck in similar ways before I even go to forums or whatever, so I don't get spoiled, because usually people won't put spoilers in a review so much. And yeah, I get in there and nobody's complaining about exactly the same thing I complained about, but there were people talking about how some people had an existential crisis playing this game. Some people had a religious experience playing this game.
Those things look very similar.
Yes, honestly, yes. But I mean, it meant that those things I was feeling as I was walking around, and the sense I had that there's more to this. Even after the environmental puzzles, I'm like, there's more. There is something else here. What is it? And how do I find it? And it turns out that, of course, the witness being the witness, all of that is just as freaking vague as any of the rest of it. And you wouldn't think so, because you kind of get a hint from when you walk around, you find the puzzles, but you also find these little, like, MP3 players, where you will get an audio log. And all the audio logs are quotes from, like, scientists or philosophers, people from hundreds of years ago, and the 70s even, you know. It's like, what broad range of time and different locations on Earth and stuff. They're not all... Some of them are, like, Eastern mysticism type stuff. And some of them are, like, Christian scholars from a long time ago.
Yeah, of course, once again, I know this is not the most relevant point, but yeah, you find audio logs and stuff in this game, and it just continues to confirm that the only lore or story this game has is real life.
Yeah. They want you to be connecting everything you're experiencing in this theme park that isn't fun is life. It's like they're trying to connect you to your reality again.
Telling you that this game is a story about a character is absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
At least most theme parks have a Ferris wheel, I'm just saying.
Yeah, this one just has a boat.
Yeah. Boat's not the same as a Ferris wheel.
No. You can climb a couple towers and see things from a vantage point, but they don't move. Well, until you get to the glass elevator at the very end, which I've only done via video, you know. I've witnessed it through walkthrough. I've never completed any of my games to that point. And I think that my copy might actually be broken, because under the mountain there was a puzzle that wouldn't even start for me that should have. And
yeah, like, trying to approach this before recording resulted in, to put it simply, a breakdown, I think.
I guess. I mean, yeah, it was just emphasized how much the game upsets me. Me too. It's like, I want to like it so much more than I can. But for me, that's mostly about the gatekeeping. The game is dead set on gatekeep. Like, there's all these hidden areas that aren't hidden enough that you don't know they're there. They're, like, hidden in plain sight. It's a door that's locked from the opposite side. It's like, oh my god, how do I get to the other side of this? It's just to see all the areas. It's not to have the satisfaction of completing all the puzzles or figured out all the rules or whatever. No. But I think, like The Witness itself, the discussion about it is going to be a big old mess. Because the game itself seems to be asking the question, why do we play games? What do we get out of them? And the one thing it forgot about is the most important thing, in my opinion, which is fun. and, the human need for joy. I think this game completely forgets about that, or discounts it, or doesn't value it itself, because
doesn't want it, or
it takes all the notions of fun and then makes them as little fun as possible. Exploration, mastery,
narrative, stakes.
So the game seems to ask, why do we play games at all? And yeah, like we were saying, it seems to have lost track of fun as one of the primary reasons that people do play games. And I think it did that in contemplation of the question, can games be more? And I think that you lose the plot, basically, when you decide that being something more means the game cannot also be fun. I think, you know what I mean? It's like, you take all the theme parkiness, and you didn't have fun with it. I don't think any part of The Witness is having fun with itself.
It's a theme park. Do not mistake it for an amusement park. You will not be amused. That's not what it wants to do.
In fact, yeah, I mean, in essence, when we're starting to have discussions about art and video games, I was like, I think The Witness is art more than it's a game. I feel like it's honestly, each section of the game feels like its own meditative contemplation setup with an immersion puzzle element and like an art installation. Like each section of the game is kind of like a different room in the museum, but where each one isn't just like, it's an immersive display with a different theme in every room. And one of the main overarching themes of the entire thing is, why do we play video games and what motivates us? Because it's like, do you play games to complete them? Do you play games, you play games to win, right? You need to play it to win. Well, by whose standard are you going to win? Because at some point you got to choose your own standard, because this game is going to let you down. And I do think that's by design. I think it was trying to be hard in all the ways it could contemplate being hard. And if you just watch a playthrough of what it's like inside the mountain, come back and argue with me if you think I'm wrong about that. That it was just trying to, like, okay, here's what's going on. We have this puzzle. How do we make it more difficult? How do we make it more tricky? How do we make it borderline impossible? And then how do we do that again and again and again? It's like, the people who were brainstorming on that kind of stuff, I hope never get hired by the government. Exactly. Because torture is something that they've got a handle on. I'm just going to say. It's like, how do we make this worse? They had an answer. Okay? And if you don't believe me, yeah, I encourage you to go watch a walkthrough of the mountain section of that and just have your jaw drop when you look at what these puzzles do and what these puzzles are.
And, like, I'm experienced with games that, like, losing is a core part of the experience, right? Like, roguelikes are very prominent in the losing is part of the fun kind of gameplay. And, like, while you can't, like, lose in The Witness, I kinda wish you could.
Right, or, like, experience points would mean something and gain you something, a bonus to help you with the next step. Because, no, you're just supposed to get good. And then
like, you don't get feedback on what you did wrong.
Nope, it just didn't work.
You need to be good at this, and that is the end of the story. Completely. Usually when that's a core thing, there'll end up being at least a little bit more to it than that.
Right. It's like, I wish there had been at least a couple teachers of adults involved in this, because there are ways in which people learn things that were not consulted in any of this. And for a game that's trying to teach you new things without using any words, I think there needed to be more teaching involved. And it just wasn't. And just blah. But I think all of that kind of might be on purpose. It's by design. But the thing is how much impact does your art have if you gatekeep all your audience out of experiencing it? That's the point I kind of want to make. And it's like, when I was playing it, and like, I literally couldn't get any further at some point. The game just let me down. I couldn't even start one of the puzzles, it gave me the signal that I had completed the one before it that turned on the power to the next one, and it just didn't work. So it's like, even if I wanted to get good, I couldn't. And then, unfortunately, I have not been able to find a walkthrough that would actually just be exploring all the areas that open up once you get through to the whole mountain and everything finally opens up to you. Because, you can still see the ending because that is just exposed to you in a code. And once you have that code, you can put it in a specific place, and then a door opens in a different way, and then you can go to the end. And you can experience and explore the end. And then that's the only time there's any sort of story at all, and it's barely a story anyway. Well, I guess no, inside the mountain there's more story, but I never got to experience that because I was gatekept out of it by coordination level. I don't have the coordination to be able to solve those puzzles anyway, even if I wanted to. Knowing the solution did not change any of that, even if I had, I guess, because my game actually appears to be broken.
Yeah, and I'm remembering sort of the thing that I think you're thinking of with, like, guys, they made the puzzle scroll in the box away from your cursor and stuff. It's like, why?
Yeah.
Why? There's difficulty and then there's this.
They're doing the kind of shit with these late game puzzles that feels like something out of something that's supposed to be difficult for laughs.
Yeah, like, if this was, like, satire or something, you'd laugh at how absurd and silly this is.
And, yeah, you would.
It's like, the game is practically trolling you at this point, and when it's, again, not about amusement, no one is laughing, nobody is having a good time, and,
Right. And if that's the point, then the game appears to be saying, yes, we're trying to prove to you, because you don't seem to get the message yet, that playing video games is a waste of time. Looking for art is a waste of time. And if you're going to be deeper between the meaning of the concept of the witness in, like, Buddhist thinking and kind of the nature of some of the audio logs in there is combined with the frustration of getting some of these environmental puzzles, is that the search for meaning entirely is a waste of time. It's such a defeatist, pessimistic attitude. So the game makes you feel lonely. It makes you feel gatekept. At least us. Gatekept, lonely, pessimistic. Yeah, it's just...
like, the worst part to me is the fact that there's no release, right? Like, I can go through, like, an extraordinary amount of suffering in my games, but if there's no release, even in the, like, that's okay, kind of empty, hollow, like, it's okay to feel this way. If there's not even that, like, what are you doing? Why are you making this?
In fact, if you go through, I'm not going to even talk about the challenge. That's a thing on top of itself that, there's even more to just the surface level bullshit than we've even talked about. But if you make it just through, once you're in the mountain, it is linear, and there is a progression of the puzzles. And there is in every section a linear progression through the puzzles. Once you get onto the mountain and you solve all of the mountain puzzles, you will end up in a glass elevator. If you get in the glass elevator and turn it on, it will take you up in the sky where you will float over the island, and it will undo everything that you've done and leave you back at the very beginning where you could start all over again fresh.
Yeah, it literally deletes every single bit of your progress.
Right. It does save first before you do that, so you can go back to being under the mountain, but then if you want to do anything else on the island, you have to walk back up through the whole mountain to do anything else, unless you've been saving the whole time, which, since it generally saves your progress, it might not be something you ever thought to do, because, yeah, there is a save feature in the game, but it's not obvious why you'd want one, and it's not... Yeah, it probably isn't something that you would have done, so it's another frustration where literally the game does not care about your experience at all. But it's like, why are you working so hard to fight me understanding your message or seeing your point of view? And that's different than hand-holding. It's like anti-empathy at some point. It's like, I want you to understand that the nature of the universe is inherently zero-sum competitive. And the end game for all of it is it's pointless. Just quit fighting everybody and everything. You're never going to win. Rather than My view on the world is that, yeah, we're all in this kind of meaningless, meaning we have to make our own meaning and discover what meaning is for us and invest in that and recognize that everyone else's meaning is going to be different. It doesn't make my meaning any less, but it means that I do have to hold it myself and understand that it's only going to be shared where it is shared. And everything I hold that's different than what I see in the world is just mine to hold. You know, that's not going to be an easy thing to do, but if I want to have a meaning that is mine, it's my responsibility to hold it. And I don't think the philosophy of the witness gets that far. I think they get so caught up in the, I thought that there would be an ending, you know, because it's like there isn't. In fact, if you do the secret ending, where you go through all this, you do get to witness a movie, a short film, about the player waking up, and it turns out that this was all a virtual reality experience, that you put your body into basically stasis. I mean, pee in the tube kind of stasis while your body sleeps. And the guy that you're playing detaches himself from the machine, and he has trouble walking because his legs are atrophied. And there's a urine bottle on the floor, and he's in an empty office. And there's nobody around. And he's been there for a long time, obviously, because his muscles don't work quite right. And you see that it's a very well-made little film. And he's playing with the physical environment, remembering what it's like to touch things, and everything makes too much noise. The sound balance in the movie is set up so that the noises are too loud, like they would be if you hadn't actually been using your external ears in a while. Because The Witness doesn't even have music. It has just a very few sound cues, and that's it. It's mostly silent. You hear your footsteps, but, you know, every sound is absolutely intentional to give you a very specific signal. There's no ambient noise, no bird song, no music, no creatures, nothing like that. But anyway, so in the movie still, there's a Christmas tree in the office, where the implication is that having that escapist notion and being in that environment is so distancing for you. It makes you so isolated from the rest of the world that you didn't even notice that Christmas happened. You come out, you're left out of everything. You're left out of the office party. Where's your family? Why didn't somebody come and get you? It's Christmas. What have you? Only for him to stumble out, you know, he has a snack of a cookie or whatever, and he drops one on the floor and doesn't even bother to pick it up. He leaves the cupboards open, stumbles outside, and is starting to look for environmental puzzles on the outside. So he had to bring the immersion out with him, and then it ends. And I think it just hammers home with a sledgehammer that whole idea that video games are a waste of time, you're wasting your life, you're sacrificing your relationships, escapism is going to be the death of you, and we can't make a game hard enough or bad enough to get you to stop playing. That's what it feels like The Witness is about to me. The thing is, in addition to that surface level, he did do all the work. I'm talking about Jonathan Blow. I haven't mentioned him this entire time, but this all appears to be kind of from a very singular point of view, and he did star in that film at the end. The thing is, though, he did make those meditative focuses of contemplation. He did make these little shrines in the different areas, where if you're paying attention, there is something to contemplate here. He just didn't celebrate it. It's like he used so much time and energy to make this art, and then got so caught up in the video game-ness of it that he sabotaged the whole thing. And I want to talk about just a tiny bit. If you want to know what I'm talking about here, I would say if you already own the game, I would suggest you go and play the Fortress again. And I mean the second castle, not the one you start in, but the other one that has the drawbridge and the mazes inside, the tower that overlooks everything. Play that one again. And really just kind of pay attention to what's going on in the environment and look for little details, especially on the side where you're walking on the panels, which is actually a really cool thing that they do. They actually make you make the path on the ground, which both of them utilize the space in a different way than is used in any other section of the game. And both of those spaces really use the audio logs to talk about what you just went through. There's some quotes from Skinner about talking about motivation and how do we motivate people to do things, and is it dangerous to use this power to motivate people? And, you do that while you're overlooking a hedge maze that you were just in, and you're only halfway through. And between that and the symbolism of what each type of puzzle is doing, like there is one puzzle type where the whole point is you have to draw a line to separate the black dots from the white dots. You're really supposed to think about, how do I keep these two sections separate? And they used white and black to demonstrate that. And you can't help but think about what it costs to separate white and black while you do it, especially in an environment. And when you're doing it on the one side with the statues available, think about what the statues are doing and saying, and who's pointing at who, and what's going on. Because it's more narrative than anything else in the whole game, I feel. It's probably that I just didn't delve in deep enough. And that's just the thing. If it hadn't worked so hard at gatekeeping me, it hadn't worked so hard at being so freaking pessimistic, there's so much here. There's so much to think about. There's so much to talk about. And I'm looking at Honeyshuckle, because she never even played the Buddhist temple part. And, I'm going to have to go back someday probably and really sit with it and explore what that feels like. Because there's these beautiful environments and there's like all this secret knowledge. And it's not really knowledge. It's not trying to tell you anything specific. It's just trying to, in a very Buddhist fashion, juxtapose a couple disparaging notions at the same time in an environment that fosters it. And by solving puzzles in these environments, it gives your mind the space to really think about it. Think about how we use space. Think about how we separate things and why we separate things. Back in the fortress, there's a whole kind of 4-layered thing going on, where at first your puzzles are on the ground, and then they're a little bit elevated, and then they're way elevated. There's a long drop between you and the ground by the time you get to the 4th one in that section. And it really is using that distance from the ground as a metaphor to talk about other things. And there is that kind of metaphoric environmental influence happening all over the Witness. But in order to not force feed you any of it, it doesn't tell you what it is. But if you want to hear somebody else contemplating these things, a guy named Jackson Wagner has done like 15 or more part series on examining the Witness. And it's hours and hours and hours of material. And I haven't gotten through all of it. And I may never. But I recommend episode number 5, where they are talking about the Fortress. And I recommend you play the Fortress first if you have the game, and to have your own ideas about it. And then come and listen to him talk about it. And then go back in and see if you get even more out of it than what he presents. Because, like Jackson opens the door and shows you what he gets out of things, and then I've gone back in and gotten my own take, which is, based on my own experience and my own environment and my own contemplations and my own history. I bring my knowledge to it, and I got even more. So the thing is the Witness is a starting point for stuff in a way that's hard to describe, and it absolutely is a waste of time if you're not willing to do that extra work outside, I gotta say.
Which most people aren't.
Oh, absolutely not.
This is why I laugh about the fact that, it respects your time. It doesn't.
No!
It does not respect your time at all. And, as somebody who's, always busy doing things, against my own best interest, probably, I need something that at least feels like it sees me as a player, as a person. In a way that this game just... it doesn't really...
I'm of two minds, of course. On one hand, yeah. On the other hand, if you wanted to look at what's possible in contemplation through metaphor in a video game, it is a good representation of some of that. I think it's really poorly executed. I think it should have chosen one of these themes and gone with it and made a really good game about one of them, rather than trying to contemplate all of philosophy in one obtuse puzzle game.
Yeah, it's my experience with the game is very, cherry-picked or vicarious. It's when this game is, doing things right. At its best, it is genuinely, good, thoughtful, deep experience. But at the same time, I can't help but feel that, it sucks and I hate it.
And it's super valid. All of that is super valid. What we want to say is, no matter what surface you're scratching, when you're talking about the Witness, you are just scratching a surface. There's always something deeper. Now, is it meaningful? Yes, but it also is trying to convince you that it isn't. I think it really is trying to say that the search for meaning in itself is futile. So, what do you do with that? What do you do with someone who's basically trying to tell you not to do the very thing they're inviting you to do? It just... I don't know. I'm waving my arms in frustration. I don't know what to tell you about this game.
I know that kind of attitude makes for a terrible D&D game, and now I've seen that it also makes for a terrible experience in a video game, you know, at least in my perspective. So, like...
And if I can never play another game that hates video games, I never want to play another video game that has the presumption that playing video games is bad. I'm like, I don't ever need to experience that in a video game again. If some guy, usually it's a guy, needs to make a video game rather than going to therapy, I would rather know that in from the get-go and not play it. I'm like, I will pass. This is a narrative that is old and dried up, and I'm done. I've played like 4 of these in the last year. I'm done. I can touch grass anytime I want. Games encourage me, personally, to hang out with my family, to talk to my friends. I have been so much more social because of video games, and fun lets me survive the terribleness that's going on in the world.
And the Witness itself is bringing us together.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like... Yeah, it is bringing us together. But, like, on the point of, please stop making games, of telling us to not play games, you could make a painting. You could make a short film. Or a full movie.
Start a podcast I'll never listen to. You go for it.
Why use the medium that you hate to describe why you hate the medium, and then make it hundreds of hours of potential playthrough time? Like, please!
Usually it's dozens, not hundreds, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I never play another game with that theme, I will be grateful that I was able to avoid them, because I'm done. I'm over it. I don't need to do that. And I think everyone who does need to do that maybe doesn't need to do public therapy anymore. I'm really done with that particular notion of public therapy, and I wish they'd quit funding those projects. Just my take. I can find gems. I can be a prospector and sift for the gold in the silt. I can do it, but I shouldn't have to this much. I shouldn't have to this much. And honestly, I don't. I don't have to. There are so many better games for art games. There are so many better games that have specific themes that they stick to. And, and they're not so pessimistic. I don't need more pessimism in my life. So in other words, to wrap up, if you want to witness the Witness as basically a character study in a lot of things, and I mean a lot of things because it's kind of a mess, I recommend it as a scholarly exercise. I recommend that you take care of your own well-being while you do so, because some people have been negatively affected by the existential crisis and the pessimism that they feel while they're in this environment. It's valid. Your feelings of anger, frustration, confusion while playing this game are super, super valid. Please use some self-care while you explore this, and I recommend that you don't do it in isolation.
As somebody who didn't play this in isolation, I'm glad that I didn't, and I'm also glad I stopped.
Yes, and that's just the thing too. Buy it on sale. Do not feel bad when you quit. I don't want to know what kind of masochist you are if you completionist this thing, I swear. But anyway, yeah, if you want to have a religious experience, play Outer Wilds. Just saying.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you want to play a game that tackles some of the issues that gaming itself represents, Undertale came out before this, and it still stands up. Maybe go play that one.
I'm going to. I just haven't gone around to it.
Of course, it's like, yeah, if you want something that deals with, you know, making the world a puzzle with its perspective, of course, that's Superliminal.
And it's on your side.
Yeah.
It's on your side.
Anyway. That's The Witness. We have lots of reasons not to recommend it, but also, I don't want to crap on anybody who liked it. I don't want to crap on anybody who loved it. It's just, whew.
Yeah,
we are not the same.
Like, after we made the episode on Return to Monkey Island, and we're like, we don't really want to record more rant episodes, and, like, there's a reason why, like, this doesn't quite hit that rantness. Okay, maybe for me it does, but
it didn't for me, though. I mean, seriously, there is gold to pan for here. That's what I'm trying to say, is it's not nothing.
Even saying that I like or dislike The Witness, either of those does not do justice on its own. I walked away from this game wanting to think about it some more. From my understanding from the little bit of it I went through, this is by design in a lot of cases, but it's very much just a catalyst. It needs you to be a fulfilling experience. In a way, it's kind of not encouraging you to make something good out of it.
Agreed.
From its Steam description alone, it's trying to reconcile its relationship between being a video game, being an art piece, being anti-video game, being something that's compelling to play at all.
And still wanting to have value and being worth the money that was invested in it and that people pay to play it. Ugh, that's a lot. That's a tall order. Only you can be the judge of whether or not that's true for you. And I want to be done talking about it. So I'm going to say, this has been Collab Not Multiplayer. I am Giggleclutz.
I'm Honeyshuckleex, and this is some of the most tired any episode has ever made me.
And I'm Sackbot Barbecue.
Goodbye!